studio to shed more light on this matter and indeed the implications of this deferral is Maria Nzomo, Director, Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies, University of Nairobi. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I think just to demystify what this whole deferral issue is about, a good point to start at would be what exactly a deferral is, and indeed distinguish this between a referral, because there seems to be a bit of confusion between these two.
Thank you, Lillian. Let's start with a referral. A referral is when the United Nations Security Council actually refers a case to the ICC. Or a member state, as a member of the Rome Statute, can also make a referral on a case where, which involves, of course, people who have been seen to have actually violated international peace and security by committing or suspected of having committed crimes against humanity or genocide, etc. So it is now that's called referral, because the case is actually being taken to the ICC itself. Now, the deferral, which is what we are now referring to, is a situation where it is the affected, actually normally it's an individual, because those who are taken to court at The Hague, they go as individuals, they don't go as states. But of course, everyone belongs to a particular state and a region. As in our case, it's not just a person, it's also a head of state and a vice president of, a deputy president of our state, and of course another, personality also of our state.
Right.
So this is a situation now where we are asking as a Kenya for a deferral of those cases, especially because they affect very key members of our leadership, the top leadership in our country.
And indeed, if this deferral is granted, it would be for a year.
It is for a year.
Then what would be the impact of this?
The impact well, first of all, let's ask, will it even be granted? As you know, this request is made to the United Nations Security Council. And the reason I'm saying we need to even ask that is, you recall, this is not the first time you're actually asking for a deferral.
Right.
We did that again in March 2011 on this same case, and the United Nations Security Council declined to grant us the deferral. Now, of course, the circumstances have changed. Like I said, two key members of our government are, actually involved in this, and so there is even a stronger reason for actually asking for a deferral. And that's why we are coming again, and you can see there is even the added weight of the African Union, hence the summit. So the point being, we are hoping this time it will be different from March 2011. Now,
and just on that bit, that we're hoping that it will be different. What level of lobbying are we looking at? Is it needed? And how then does, for instance, the AU come in all of this, if at all?
Yes, certainly the lobbying is needed, because although ordinarily it looks like a legal process, it is actually at this point a political process as well. As when regarding the the ICC process, that's a legal process. But when the matter moves now to the United Nations Security Council, there is a very heavy load there of politics. So lobbying certainly is important. Lobbying all the members of the Security Council, especially those members that hold the veto power, who are the 5 permanent members. And of course, as you know, the 3 non-permanent members from Africa, they are not even members of the Rome Statute. They are not under the Rome Statute. But and it's important because it's not just those 3. Only 6 actually in total. In that, in a whole out of the 15 members of the Security Council are actually members of the are bound by the Rome Statute. So there is a question of, are they really keen? Does the Rome Statute really matter to them? Because they are not even members of they are not bound by this statute. Now, but also, there is always the traditional problem. Can we persuade all the 5 permanent members to come on board, because if they veto, if any one of them vetoes, then the case is going nowhere. We will again be back to the drawing board as we were in 2011. So it's a touch and go situation, but it is worth trying, because obviously there is a lot at stake for Kenya and as well as Africa.
Right, and looking at the president particularly, should he fail to go to The Hague without a deferral, what then are the implications of this? Should he opt just out, as the AU has called on him to do, what then?
That's really a catch-22 there, because he cannot be, forced, taken there by force. If we so decide, of course we have a lot of support of, our fellow brothers and sisters in African Union in this regard, that actually we should not go. But I suspect the thinking at this moment is that the period between now when we are requesting for a deferral and the time for the trial that when the trial of our president starts, which is November 12th, then we have a month. And if we have made a request for deferral, we are hoping possibly during that time, we have gotten the decision of the Security Council.
Right.
So we will know whether or not, he has been granted the deferral. So there may not be any need actually to do anything, any boycott. But if now, by that date, the deferral is not granted, and we choose, of course, as a country and as a sovereign state, that we don't want our president to go to The Hague,
right.
Then of course there will be implications for that, which we cannot control.
Right, and Professor Nzomo, hold that thought. We'll be talking to you on more of that shortly. But for now, as earlier reported, the African Union has directed President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto not to attend trials at the International Criminal Court, and the African heads of state and government, in a resolution at the end of the extraordinary summit, session, give the United Nations Security Council and the ICC until the 12th of November to defer the trials of the Kenyan president and his deputy, and only consider charges against them once they have served their term in office. Now, Francis Gashuri has that report for us now from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Let's take a look.
The 15th extraordinary session of the African Union was convened on Kenya's request to review Africa's relationship with the International Criminal Court. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was among the heads of state and government attending the meeting, is facing 5 counts of crimes against humanity at the ICC in relation to the 2007-2008 post-election skirmishes. His trial is scheduled to kick off on the 12th of next month. His deputy William Ruto is already facing trials at the ICC. The African leaders at the end of the session defiantly resolved that President Kenyatta and his deputy Ruto can only be tried once they leave office.
Accordingly, we have agreed that no charge shall be commenced or continued before any international court or tribunal against any serving heads of state or government or anybody acting or entitled to act in such capacity during his or her term of office. To safeguard the constitutional order, stability and integrity of member states, we have resolved that no serving AU head of state or government or anybody acting or entitled to act in such capacity shall be required to appear before any international court or tribunal during his term of office.
The Leaders Summit asked the United Nations Security Council and the Hague-based court to call off the Kenyatta-Ruto trials to enable them execute their constitutional mandate, a move that has already triggered varied reactions, with critics claiming that AU was shielding human rights violation suspects and condoning impunity in the continent.
Who sent the others, and has any other country in any other region been sent to the ICC by anyone? Whether Asia, whether South America, whether Europe, whether where? No, it's only African countries that have been sent, whether there are 2 or how many, but it's only African countries.
And if the UN Security Council and the ICC will not have considered shelving the trials against President Kenyatta and his deputy Ruto, the African Union leaders said they would be forced to reconsider the continent's relationship with the ICC.
We have decided to set up a contact group of the Executive Council to be led by its chairperson, composed of 5 members from each region plus Kenya, to undertake consultations with the members of the United Nations Security Council. In particular, it is 5 permanent members with a view to engaging with them on all concerns of the African Union in its relationship with the ICC, including the deferral of the Kenyan and the Sudan case, in order to obtain their feedback before the beginning of the trial on 12 November 2013. If our request for deferral does not get a response until then, we have agreed to request for postponement of the trial.
President Kenyatta, in the speech he delivered to his peers, claimed that Western powers were driving the ICC process and had used the prosecutions to pressure Kenyan leadership into adopting or renouncing various positions. He told his colleague African leaders that all along he had fully cooperated with the ICC, but in return, the court had allegedly presented him as a fugitive from justice who was guilty as charged, assertions that informed the summit's resolutions.
We have also agreed that Kenya should send a letter to the United Nations Security Council requesting for deferral in conformity with Article 16 of the Rome Statute of the proceedings against the President and Deputy President of Kenya that would be endorsed by all African state parties. And we will review the progress made in the implementation of our decision when we will be meeting again in an extraordinary session sometime by the end of November 2013.
It remains unclear whether President Kenyatta will comply with the African Union directive and skip his trial at The Hague next month. His deputy William Ruto, who arrived back in Nairobi this morning, is expected back at the ICC courtroom on Monday. But will he observe the AU directive? If President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto will opt to comply with the African Union directive and skip their trial at the ICC, the likely outcome is that the Hague-based court will issue warrants of arrest against them, just like it has in the case against Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. So is President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy ready to join the list of most wanted persons by the International Criminal Court, or will they opt to prove their innocence in the court of law? Only time can tell. Francis Gashuri, Citizen Weekend, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Thank you, Francis Gashuri, for that. With us in studio, Maria Nzomo. And let me just read some of the comments we are getting regarding this issue from you. AU is obviously misleading Kenyans. AU resolutions are not binding on ICC. Let our leaders continue attending to their cases. This is Bishop Papa in Nairobi. Somebody here saying, for my own opinion, my own opinion is that the boycott of President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy will bring a lot of consequences for innocent Kenyans. And in the end, it will be like what happened in Ivory Coast. I'm Edward Matiko in Nairobi. And these are some of the reactions we are getting, Professor Maria. But, you know, we're looking at mixed reactions, and our reporter, Francis Gashuri, there talked about what is likely to happen if our president and the deputy president indeed boycott the trials. What are we looking at? Are we looking at sanctions? Are we looking at warrants of arrest?
If you have to go by, you know, the way the ICC has previously acted, especially if you just look next door, the way they responded to Bashir's reaction to his own situation in a similar circumstances, they have, you know, within their mandate as the ICC, the right to issue a warrant of arrest, and because you have defied the court. And, you know, under the Rome Statute, you know, you are obliged to attend the court. Of course, we know that our president and his deputy and the other colleague, they have up to now been very compliant. But in the event that happens, the ICC is not a political institution, although, of course, we have said it has been politicized. But it is, you know, where the matter has reached now is within the court itself. And it is simply following its legal process. And the first step is to invite all those concerned to appear before the court. But in the event they do not, the next thing they do automatically is to issue warrants of arrest. So I can see logically, unless something they are persuaded otherwise, they may move in that direction. As for sanctions, I don't see at this point any basis, because it is not Kenya under trial. The ICC is not putting Kenya under trial. So it cannot impose sanctions. I mean, no international body can impose sanctions on Kenya as a country. And I think that's what, you know, some of the people involved in this debate, they are confusing the person of the president with the presidency and the country.
Right.
And that separation needs to be made, especially when you start talking about any sanctions, whether they're economic or political or anything else.
Right, and Professor Nzomo, the president and indeed his deputy have cooperated with the ICC so far.
Yeah.
And the world is now watching the country and really looking at Africa as a whole to just see how they will react to all of this. A trial of President Kenyatta would be a threat to international peace and security, as Alex Chamoda highlighted in his story there, and he now finds himself caught in a situation where he may actually opt out of the ICC trial. What do you foresee? What do you see out of all of this?
First, is just look first at the Security Council itself, because as you know, that is the organ of the United Nations that is charged with that responsibility to determine under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations whether any action that it takes, because it's the one which is going to determine whether to grant the deferral or not. Whether by granting the deferral, there will be, first of all, you know, the international peace and security would be affected negatively, or not granting the referral actually would have that effect. That is the determination the court, the United Nations Security Council will first initially have to make. It has that mandate to make that determination about, whether these two individuals, by not granting the deferral, especially the deputy and the vice president, the deputy president and the president himself, may actually already threaten an already very sensitive situation we have in this country. We have just gone through a major threat of international terrorism, and which needs really a president who is hands-on to actually bring that situation back to normality. By having him distracted by the ICC, perhaps it could be argued that could help, could actually bring about, a sense of insecurity and affect international peace and security. So there are many ways the Security Council may look at this issue in making its determination. But I cannot say beforehand, especially knowing the Security Council is a political body, first and foremost. It's not a legal organ. Right. The decision may be made purely on political, based on political interest, without even actually considering seriously the breach of international. And we are pressed for time. So final question. Africa seems to be flexing their diplomatic muscle, and this is Africa as a whole. But for Kenya, is this good or bad internationally for our image? And secondly, as we wind up, it is claimed that if Africa walks out and is the largest constituency of the ICC, this would dent the ICC, rather its image. And just perhaps as we wind up, your thoughts on this? Well, first of all, from the Africa point of view, I think the support we have got is overwhelming. So for Africa, we look good. We really look good that, we have so much support from, our fellow African countries. So our image, as far as Africa is concerned, it remains good. How the rest of the global community interpret this is another issue altogether. And the opinion may be divided on that. In terms of whether it's a good thing, depending on how dogmatic we are about interpretation of international human rights and compliance. The image of Kenya may be, uplifted or go down. It can go either way. It really depends on who is looking at it. But from the point of view of Africa, especially because we are extremely bitter about the way we feel we've been mistreated by the ICC, clearly, Kenya looks, In fact, everybody is on Kenya's side because of that. So we cannot generalize, Lillian, for the entire global community.
Right.
Because there are many, many different interests, diverse interests, and some of them, you know, would find as a violation of, you know, international laws and norms for the way we are moving.
Right, we are pressed for time, and indeed it is an interesting topic. So much to be talked about, including the fact that there are those who believe that they deserve justice. The justice must be carried out, and therefore really a lot of questions to be asked about what the way forward is and just who the determining factor will be. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Maria Nzomo, Director, Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies, University of Nairobi, shedding more light on that matter and just breaking this down for us, helping us understand this issue better. Thank you so much for that. And let's